Hello everyone and welcome back to another drawing tutorial video. And in today's video we're going to be looking at part 2 of our fit anime male character tutorial. So we're going to basically draw the exact same character that we did before, only this time we're going to be drawing them from the back so we can see kind of what's going on with their back muscles and stuff like that. So just like always, we're going to start with a very low opacity construction line layer. If you're doing this traditionally, then just make sure you draw super lightly for all of this, because we're going to be doing a lot of erasing and a lot of rebalancing here, so we want to make sure that anything we correct and change won't show up in the finished piece. So I'm going to kind of be matching my figure off of the previous one to get like the height and stuff as close as I can, but I'll make sure to still walk you guys through the proportions, so that way if you don't feel like watching the other one and you're just trying to do this one, then you can still follow along and keep up. So from here we're just going to draw in a simple jaw, just kind of like this. I like keeping my masculine jaws a little bit more sharp, kind of elongate them a little bit. There we go. So, and this doesn't have to be perfect here, most of it's going to be hidden, and then we can build it out from the neck, but for right now I'll do that. So then about a jaw length, so this portion here from bottom of the circle to the tip of the chin, about that distance is where we'll draw in our shoulder line. Then, just like we went over in the previous one, we're actually going to make the ribs just outside of our head. That way we have a larger frame to build the back off of. Pretty much the more muscular your characters get, the more I like to exaggerate the frame, because then you can, it just makes it a lot easier to follow along too. Sometimes I won't even bother putting in a rib placeholder if they're super muscular, because then it kind of can get in the way. But for now, we're going to stick with it, and it should be fine. So next I'm just drawing in some basic shoulder circles and just some little placeholder lines for the shoulder blades. So from there, we're going to come down to about one head height here. So imagine this head right here is right in between. About that distance is where we want to draw in our hip line. From there we want the hips even, and if not even, then a little bit inside of the widest portion on our ribs, since our masculine characters don't have super wide hips. So we'll do this side's a little bit too wide, we'll shrink it in like so. And I'm not super concerned with the overall shape here. We're going to kind of piece it together as needed once we connect the dots here. So I'm going to shift this a little bit this way. There we go, just trying to make it centered. And we can even mark out right here. So this is the rib. This is the hip bone. So this little portion in here is not going to be moving. From there we can just go ahead and connect. So follow about halfway down. I don't want to sink this in this much, so about halfway down here we're going to come like this, following our ribs, and then we'll connect just right basically to the hip, and the hip is just going to poke out slightly. That way we don't give him too exaggerated of an hourglass figure, but since he's got low body fat, he's still going to have a taper like this. Then we'll add a super slight concave line, even more slight than on our female characters, because the a man spine still has some curve in it, but we don't want him to look super curvy like on our female characters. From there, I'm just going to give him some legs, so I'm just drawing some lines that I can kind of use as guidelines, coming straight down, kind of keep the feet apart, because again on our masculine, or on our well-built characters here, he's going to have a lot of leg muscle getting in the way, so he's not going to be able to really stand with his legs right up close to each other, because then it's just going to be too squished together and it'll look strange. So we will open the legs a little bit. Then around the roughly, around halfway is where we'll drop in our little knee joints here. You can kind of adjust as you go until you get the overall balance you want. I just roughly halfway down will do that. And then about a jaw height is where I like to draw in where my ankles are going to go. So again, just this little distance right here is roughly the same here for our feet. Some people even use like a full head height here, but I just use a jaw. So I'm just doing super simple feet shape. I don't care about the detail of the feet right now because we're just looking at the overall figure. I have hands and feet tutorials already, so if you guys want to know how to draw those, then you can go look there. So for this, I'm going to put in our wrist joints just below the hips, like so. And then just below the ribs is where I'll put in our elbow joint. Okay, so from here, we can first we'll just start with the legs, and then we'll kind of go back up to the upper body. So from here, what we can do first is start with the outside of our legs. So just like what we've already gone over, the quad sits off and just kind of hangs off to the side. So the bigger that a man's quad gets, the more it hangs off, and the thickest part is going to kind of be like right through here, kind of at an angle through the leg, okay? From here, we're mostly going to be seeing hamstrings though, so we're not going to worry about this muscle over here on our other figure. We're just going to be looking at the hamstrings here. And so from here, we're going to add in some hamstring definition, which kind of comes up like a V up towards the glutes, okay? And we don't need to worry about a thigh gap. The bigger our muscles get on our masculine characters, the less of a thigh gap they're going to have. So we're going to do the same thing over here, trying to keep it relatively symmetrical. We'll add in this little V shape for our hamstring definition again. And then we're going to add in some glutes. We're kind of going to keep the glutes not super boxy, but they're not going to be like our female character glutes where we really exaggerate the curvature of it. We want it to look a little bit flat, because as a man loses more and more body fat, you can see that the glute muscles themselves are structured a little bit differently than on our female characters, and so they appear to be a little bit more of like a box shape from the back here. You can even add some little like dimples on the side like that. That's pretty much what we want. From there, we can add in some lower back muscles. I kind of just use like an hourglass on either side of this little center line here. I'm going to have some little dimples right there, just like that. So that's kind of around where the glute muscles are kind of attached. From there, kind of round this one a little bit more. Again, we want to give him some somewhat sharp edges, but we don't want to over exaggerate that right now. Okay, so now we're going to do the calf. Now this is where it'll be most interesting. This will be our first sort of big difference from any of the tutorials we've done so far. It's because basically what we'll do is we'll draw in the little socket for our knee. So what I'm doing is I am putting in like some little lines like this, and then right off to the side putting in these little concave lines, and that'll be like kind of basically what where the tendons are for the knee. So we're going to do that over here. So now if we look over here, we can see that we've already discussed that the calf muscle on the inside here is going to be slightly smaller in appearance than this muscle on the outside, okay? So we're going to give a pretty generous calf muscle here and keeping it almost even, but then what we're going to do is kind of meet like this with this V shape. Because essentially what's going on is there's sort of a tubular calf muscle on the inside shaped like this. But then the main parts you're seeing are kind of shaped like this, where there's one head here and one head here, and they lay on the outside. So the more defined those get, almost the sharper, and they almost look flat. Now if you have enough body fat over the calf muscle, then they look rounded, but for our sort of muscular, low body fat male character, they're not going to be super round. So kind of keep them a little bit flat, coming out into points like this, okay? And then they'll taper off like normal into our ankles here with our simple feet. And then we'll do the same thing over here, trying to keep it somewhat symmetrical. Just like so. And then follow along down here, just like this. And then we might see a little bit of the kneecap at this angle off the front, like so. Alright, and then from there, we will go ahead and construct the neck. So just kind of around the base of our little circle here, that's kind of the placeholder for the skull. We'll put in this neck shape and keep it kind of wide, almost coming out to the bit here where the jaw tapers off into the chin, like so. And then we can add our traps, which are gonna be nice and generous, connecting to our shoulder circles like so. You can add some little lines like this just to show a little bit of definition there in the back. Same with like kind of right here in the kind of near the spine. From there, what I like to do first is just construct the rest of our back. So as I had mentioned or alluded to in the previous tutorial, you can have short muscle bellies or long muscle bellies, and it'll kind of change the overall look of your character. So for this, the lats are no different. So we're going to give him relatively long muscle bellies, since all of his other areas have been relatively long. So we'll just go ahead and connect the lats pretty much just right to the base of our ribs. And unlike the chest, we can basically take the lats almost up to the middle of our little shoulder circles here, because the lats, depending on how big they get, they can almost look like they swallow the shoulders from the back. They're pretty well connected to the rear delt. So if you don't have super big rear delts, then you honestly, it just doesn't even look like there's a difference. It just looks like the back then just pops into the shoulder. But on this character, we will just stick with giving him some good delt definition here, but we're not going to be too worried about the rear delt. We're going to worry about that on our like super jacked character that we'll do next. But for now, we can still pop these in. So for the tricep, there is two heads of it. There is the long head, which is here on the inside, and then the short head, which is here on the outside. And they almost connect just like this. So keep it sharp, keep it angled, connect with a V here, and then it tapers down into our elbow joint like so. And then just like what we discussed last time, the forearm on the inside is mostly for your grip strength, and so it tends to be a little bit smaller than the head of the forearm on the outside, because this is kind of integrally connected to your bicep. So as your character is doing bicep curls, that part of the forearm is going to get bigger too. So we're going to do that. Then we'll do this like so. And basically just trying to keep them somewhat symmetrical here. Oops. As I just botch a line, but it is what it is. Just following along here. A little bit bigger on the outside. Taper it into the wrist. You can go ahead, the more muscular your character gets, you can keep the wrist joints a little bit wider than what we would normally do. Just so then it's not like tapering into something like that, right? Because then it starts looking crazy. So do that. And just like last time, I'm just going to have his hands kind of neutrally off to the side like this. This isn't a hand tutorial, so I really am not worried about detail on the hands. They're just placeholders like the feet. Like so. I always try to make them semi-symmetrical though, so I'll make that, oops, get a little bit bigger. There we go. Okay, so I guess just real quick, add in some little ear placeholders. And now we can go ahead and do the line art, although I will change this so it's a touch more symmetrical here. Okay, it's a little bit better. Although this calf is just smaller in general than our other one, so we'll kind of extend it like so. Okay, so now I'll go ahead and do the line art. Again, just like always, I'm not super concerned about the quality of my line art for this. This is just a figure study to show you guys kind of how to draw this, so I'm not worried about intersecting my lines and stuff. But if you're trying to make this like a nice finished piece, then definitely be paying attention to your line weight, even the color of your hard lines and stuff like that. If you're doing this traditionally, this step you can even do is just slightly darker lines over your construction lines. That way you can just establish the final line that you then want to trace over with like an artist marker, an artist pen. That way you can have a lot more confident lines and not mess anything up. The nice thing is with doing this digitally is that you can make corrections and stuff even in this stage and it's not gonna be visible at all in the finished piece. But if you're doing super dark hard lines traditionally and you make a mistake, it can be a little bit more of a hassle to make corrections. So again, the tricep here kind of comes up and meets the rear delt. This character, we don't want him to have super extremely defined rear delts, so we'll be able to see how those connect for our super jacked character. But for now, this will do like so. Just super simple hand, nothing to write home about. Then we'll do the same thing over here. And I'm just trying to make them as symmetrical as you can. Doesn't have to be 100% perfect here, but I want to get it close. Then we'll go ahead and draw in our forearm. Again, keeping it a little bit wider on the outside than on the inside. This line kind of got crazy looking. So fix that, do this, like so, super simple hand. Alright, then we can do the back. I like to use just kind of one line, like so, just with a very slight hourglass shape, super slight though, we don't want to over exaggerate that portion. And then we can go ahead and bump out the hips, just a touch. We don't want to make the hips too wide. Super slight concave line here. Just do it till it looks right. Add in our slight hourglass lower back straps there. Add in some dimples for the glutes. Then we can add in this semi-rounded square shape is a good way to think of it. So it's a little bit squared off, but a little bit round on some of the curves. From there, we can add in our quad. There we go. And the hamstrings. can add in some slight definition there, like so. Oops. And then same thing over here, trying to keep them somewhat symmetrical. This leg's a little bit smaller than the other one, so oops. Just try to, right, it's a little bit better. Might be a little bit bigger than the other one now, but I'll fix it in a bit. Next we'll do the sockets of our kneecap. Well, I guess the knee joint, the kneecap's in front, so that's just the socket of the knee. From there we can draw in our calf, and you can even do them on their own line. You don't need to then follow into the back of the like shin here, the overall bone. So we can just do them on their own line. Draw in a little bit of poke from where our kneecaps are, and then taper into the ankle. And again, I don't want his ankles to be super thin. Then super simple foot shape. Not a foot tutorial, so I don't care what these look like. Do that, and then we can go ahead and add our ankles, just some little pokes like that. Yeah, there we go. So, alright, so I'm going to take a step away and make sure that my character is somewhat symmetrical, make sure that he's proportional, make sure I didn't get anything glaringly wrong, and then we'll do a quick review and go over anything I might have changed and just kind of finalize. So I will be right back. Alright, so all I corrected here is I took this arm and I just rotated it in a little bit so that way the space between them is a little bit more symmetrical. My lat lines were like up in here, but that's just because I was rushing through it, so I just shaved them down a little bit, but that was everything that I changed. So either way, this is basically what we want. Remember, the more and more muscular your character is going to get, the more things will change. Also, keep in mind how long or how full their muscle bellies are. I can definitely do tutorials to show what shorter muscle bellies look like in comparison to longer muscle bellies. In fact, that's actually a good tutorial idea, so I will write that down. But we will do that later. But right now, this is just kind of a, muscular character with relatively full muscle bellies, long muscle bellies, and pretty much what they look like. So really, just try to keep your shoulders nice and broad. Make sure that your rib placeholder you're working off of is nice and wide, so you have a bigger frame to build off of. Because it's not only that the character themselves are going to have, a lot of muscle sticking off of the bone, but as they're getting more and more built, there's a lot of layers of muscles that are just overall thickening them up, as well as even some widening of the diaphragm that occurs. So no matter what, they're going to have a wider frame than just a regular person. So go ahead, keep the ribs wide so you can build off of them. Just try not to over exaggerate an hourglass figure. Don't make the hips too much wider than your ribs, otherwise they start looking like they've got bucket hips, and we don't want that for our male characters. Messing around with the triceps, definitely look for references on them just so you can kind of see exactly what the heads are doing. And then really, I guess just other than that, is just keep in mind with the glutes on our male characters, we don't want them super rounded like our female ones. So just kind of go with like a boxy shape with a little bit of roundness. Whereas on our super muscular character, it'll look a little bit different because they'll have less body weight and, less body fat, and then they'll have more muscle. So it'll look a little bit different. But for right now, this is pretty much what you want to get. And yeah, so hopefully you found this one helpful, and I will see you in the next one where we will look at the same character, but as a side profile, so you can kind of see how the physique changes with more and more muscle mass. So see you in the next one.